Hello and welcome back for part 3 of 4 of our BlazeTOTS Active at Home series. And today we are going to talk about catching, the gross motor skill of catching. So we're going to do some activities from baseball and BlazeTOTS basketball in order to practice some catching activities. As a reminder, I'm going to put up in a second the equipment list for this video. It's just a very generic list of things that you would need to be able to move through all these activities. Again, there are modifications for each pieces of equipment listed. Some are going to be heavier, some are going to be lighter, some are going to be bigger, some are going to be smaller. And don't forget, there's a lot of stuff that you can either DIY, you either have laying around your house, or can be purchased very cheaply at Walmart, Target, or the dollar store. The dollar store is often your best place for starting to buy pieces of equipment, especially if you're not sure if your child's going to stick with the sport or like an activity. So I'm going to pop the equipment list up, and then after that we will go into our 2 activities for each sport. So we'll have 2 activities for BlazeTOTS baseball, 2 activities for BlazeTOTS basketball, and then we'll go through your healthy eating at home. So our first 2 activities for our at-home catching section are going to be focused around BlazeTOTS baseball. So in order to do this activity, you need a couple different size balls, and then you have the possibility to use a mitt, so a typical catcher's mitt for baseball, or just your child's hands. So remember, I'm going to give you modifications along the way if your child has a visual impairment, an amputation or a limb loss, if they use some kind of mobility aid, if they have a hearing impairment, or if they have an intellectual disability, on how you can tweak the activity. So the first thing that we're going to teach them, if we're looking at the skill of BlazeTOTS baseball, is just actually how to physically catch a ball. And no, I'm not talking about you're throwing the ball up in the air and you're asking them to catch it with their hand. We're going to ask them to start just trying to catch the ball that is being rolled to them in a stationary position. So what you need for this is some kind of ball and your child's hands. You can add a mitt as they are more successful in the activity. The mitt's going to make it a little easier to physically trap the ball, but it's also one extra thing on their hand that can be a little harder to learn how to control. So that would be as they progress to this activity. So what you're going to do is you're very simply going to take the ball and you're going to roll it straight to them and ask them to pick it up from the ground and actually just kind of start to get the ball and catch it. You can also go through this activity with having it a little higher up in the air. If they're a little more skilled, actually have them hold their 2 hands out in front of them. I would start with a larger ball. If you're actually practicing the skill of catching, you're going to ask them to hold 2 hands out front and actually trap that ball to them. So it can start with just a simple roll on the ground directly to them, asking them to pick it up and roll it back. Our second activity that's going to add a little more movement in is actually going to be fielding the ball. So now we're going to take that rolling or that catching of the ball, and we're actually going to make it a little more unpredictable about where the ball is going to go. So they actually have to move to it. Very similar to the game of baseball. The ball doesn't come the exact same way, at the exact same speed every time in baseball. The children have to be able to move and run, ambulate, or use a mobility device to get from point A to point B to get that ball. So for this second activity, you're going to actually roll the ball on the ground to the left, to the right, or straight to the center at varying speeds towards your child in order to have them practice actually stopping the ball and then getting it back to you by either rolling, they can run it back, or they can attempt to throw it. If you have a child, so let's start with an intellectual disability. And if you have a child with an intellectual disability trying to do either one of these activities, one of the easiest things to do is just to break it down into part whole. So the first thing they're going to do is just stop the ball. So you're going to ask them to stop the ball, pick the ball up, and then bring it back to you. Easiest thing to do is just have them run it back at first. And then as you're doing the actual fielding activity, you're going to make the activity very simple, that you're always going to go to the right of them for the first couple rolls. And the next activity, you're always going to go to the left of them. And then you're going to introduce the idea of left, right, left, right. So it's a more predictable pattern. And then you're going to vary it up as they get to the various high level and actually have it moving all different directions. So that's if you have a child with an intellectual disability. If you have a child with a visual impairment, depending on what kind of residual vision they have, if any, you're going to actually move closer, or you can use a higher contrast ball than a white ball. You can use a yellow ball, you can use a red ball, so they're able to see the ball a little better. Again, from our Part 2 activity, you can use a larger ball that has bells inside of it, so they're actually able to kind of hear the ball as it's coming to them to anticipate where it is. If you have a child with an amputation, specifically upper or lower limb, you can vary how you throw the ball to them and move the ball to them, and just be a little more creative in how they're picking it up or how they're moving back and forth. If you have a child that uses a mobility aid, such as a wheelchair or a walker, you can actually have them just stop the ball for the first activity and for the fielding activity. They just move to the ball and actually block the ball, and that would be considered a stop, instead of bending down, picking it up, and then returning it back to you. So that would make that activity a little more easier. And then if you had a child with a hearing impairment, they should be able to do all of these activities. Again, you're just focusing on your simple signs that you're going to use to understand what the activity is. You're going to do a lot of hand-over-hand demonstration at the beginning of this activity, so you're going to help them, all the children, kind of understand how to catch the ball. So you're holding your hands over their hands, showing them how to catch and trap that ball, and even a demonstration of how to throw that ball back, especially for the catching aspect. Putting your hands under their arms and reaching out as they're catching is a great idea. Again, we want to try to use peer-to-peer interaction if possible, so this could be a sibling or a neighbor actually doing the activity with them as they get more and more advanced. So that's the first 2 activities for our Catching BlazeTOTS Baseball. The next thing I'll take you through is catching as it works in BlazeTOTS Basketball. So our next 2 activities for catching involve BlazeTOTS Basketball. So what you need for this activity is simply a basketball. Now this is an adult-sized basketball. I'm going to do my demonstrations with this basketball, but you really need a child-sized basketball for this activity, because it's going to be easier for them to control and pass as they get more and more skilled. So with the basketballs, what you're going to do is the first skill is going to be a simple chest pass. So as you're performing a chest pass, your feet are shoulder width apart, and then your hands are simply just going to take the ball at your chest level and pass straight out in front of them. That is a simple chest pass. That's one of the first skills that they're going to need to be able to pass that ball to a teammate, and at the same token be able to catch a ball from a teammate. So we're going to start practicing a chest pass. If you have a child with mobility impairment, this can be done great from a chair. It's actually sometimes easier to have them perform this activity sitting down for all of our preschoolers, and just be able to pass it back and forth if sitting at chair height between 2 people before they actually stand up and do this activity. So they're actually just pushing it straight out. There's no bouncing. You can be done with a beach ball to make it lighter. They're just passing the ball back and forth from one person to another, and they're practicing catching. So remember, as they're catching that ball coming back to them, they want to hold their hands out as far as possible so that they're increasing their target area. And we want to basically give them the cue to hug that ball. So as soon as that ball comes into their arms, they're hugging it to their chest, and then they're moving their hands and pushing the ball back out for the simple chest pass. If you have a child with an intellectual disability, definitely sitting down in the beginning is a lot easier to kind of explain that they're throwing straight out to you. An easy way to also demonstrate how far they should push a ball out is to turn around and put a target on your wall. Put some tape with masking tape on your wall, and ask them before they actually pass the ball to you to actually just hit it straight to the target. So they're standing just a couple inches from the wall, the ball touches, and that's it. And then they turn, and they're going to do that same activity, except for there's no target, the target's you out in front. If you have a child with a visual impairment, definitely using hand over hand for the throwing part out for a chest pass, and using a ball that either has a sound from the inside, so a beep kickball could be a great modification for this activity. So it's a bigger ball, but it emits a sound as it's coming towards them. It's a automated electronic sound, so they can kind of track it to help them pull it into their chest a little better. Again, you can use higher contrast balls as well. For individuals with a hearing impairment, there are no modifications for this activity. Just make sure you have simple signs. For children with mobility impairments, again, just from a seated position is the easiest for them. And then if they use a prosthetic, if they have amputation or limb loss, lower limb loss, they can sit at the beginning of this activity. And if they have upper limb loss or amputation, the other thing that we can do is teach them, instead of having 2 hands out in front, that there's only going to be 1 hand out in front, and they're going to catch and trap into their body however they want to. And then as they're doing their chest pass back out, they're only going to push with 1 hand. So those are and that is our chest pass activity. The next activity is teaching them how to do a bounce pass. So for a bounce pass, you're using the same chest pass motion, except for you're pushing it down into the ground so that it's going to strike about halfway between you and the person you're passing to, bounce up, and then catch it. This is going to be a much harder activity for them, as they're going to have to anticipate where to catch the ball coming back towards them. So from a parent perspective, you want to make sure that you are making the movement very similar each time. So it's the same force of the bounce coming straight to them, so it's a more predictable catch each time, so that they're actually getting to practice doing the bounce pass themselves and doing the reception of the bounce pass catch. Modifications are very similar from the chest pass activity. The only thing I would say is that we definitely want to use a bigger basketball if possible in the beginning. Just make sure that it's not too heavy for your child to get back and forth, because the bigger the ball, the easier it's going to be to catch. All right, so this is our chest pass. Go ahead and push it out. Good job. One more. Hands out so you can catch it. And chest pass it back. Very nice. All right, so this is our bounce pass. Ready, Trip? Ready to catch it? Bounce it back. Good job. This time, hit the floor. This time, hit the floor. Push it down. Push it down. There you go. Much better. Good job. So this is our fielding activity. We're going to ask them to grab the ball and throw it back. Here we go. Grab the ball. Throw it back. Good. Ready? Grab the ball. Throw it back. Grab the ball. Throw it back. Nice job, Chip. All right, so this is our last activity. Again, we're going to use a little bit bigger ball than you would normally use, so it's easier to catch. And this is just our catching activity. So I'm going to move out of the frame, throw it to Trip so you can really see how he's reaching his two hands out, catching, bringing the ball into his chest, and then throwing back. All right, Trip, you ready? Hands out. Pull it back down.
Get over me.
Throw it back. All right, one more. Ready? Hands out. Oh, good try. Try one more time. Let's try one more. Good pass. Ready? Hands out. Nice job! So for our healthy eating for our catching video, we are going to talk about making a grocery list with your preschooler. So this is a very easy activity that honestly my preschoolers love to do. It helps them have a voice in the foods and healthy foods that they're eating and that they're purchasing, and actually helps them start to make decisions that they would make as adults later in the future, starting right now. So the best way to do this is to have them create a grocery list with you. So when we go to the grocery store, most people have a list. Let's get your preschooler involved in making that list. So the easiest thing to do is to grab the printed circular that has all the deals for the week before from your grocery store and bring that home. I share this with my preschooler and ask him to select 5 or 6 items from this circular that he would like to purchase to make healthy snacks or make healthy meals for the next week. He goes through and he'll circle what he needs, and then we actually go through and we'll take those items that he circles and place them on a list. Then I'll take him with me the next time we go to the grocery store, and he has his list, I have my list. Some grocery stores are great in that they have the little kids cart, which is even better. So they kind of have their own autonomy of you have your cart and your list, and they have their cart and their list, and then they actually follow that list through the grocery store. So they're actually starting to make those healthy choices. You can have the conversation of why a banana is a healthier choice than that chocolate chip ice cream, and it wasn't on their grocery list. So it's an easy way to get them involved with the purchasing part of your food in a fun and engaging way for your preschoolers.